Sing me a sad song, make it a good one. I'm giving up on us. Leave you, I never wanted to, but you got so far away, I couldn't get to you. Maybe when you look out into the night, you think of me, dear, when I'm not here. Sing me a love song. My heart wants to hold on to yours. And I know it's been such a long road. I'm breaking, you're letting go. So your tears I hold, 'cause I'm gonna love you the rest of your life. Take all the chances you can, it's alright. Maybe sometime you look out in the night and think of me, dear, when I'm not here. I hope you'll feel this the rest of your life.
Welcome to worship on this Sunday, February the 7th with Knox Presbyterian Church in Bracebridge. My name is Reverend Heather Melnick and I'm the minister at Knox, and I am so happy to be able to share this time with you. I thought I might take a moment to explain this artwork that is hanging over my head. It was crafted by my husband, John, who gave it to me as a gift several years ago, and it has hung on this wall since we moved in, but it was so high that it wouldn't fit in the camera shot. So I thought I would lower it down this week so I can share it with you. And I feel its message is pretty appropriate as we gather to worship the one who lives love. Well, I came across that video that opened our worship service today, just this past week, and I searched everywhere online to discover who had produced it so I could ask their permission to be able to share it with you. Well, the only name that I could find that was associated with the video was Someone Who Loves You. Well, I kept searching, and it turns out that there's a website called Someone Who Loves You, and it has an associated email address, which is contact@someonewholovesyou.ca. So I at least knew they were Canadian with the .ca. So I sent off an email asking for their permission to share the video with you, and I received the most lovely response. They wrote, "Yes," with an exclamation point. "Feel free to use the video however you like. I'm sending love to you and your congregation." And then there was a PS. "My grandfather was born in Bracebridge. I hope you are keeping warm and cozy up there." So I still have no idea who they are, but I am so thankful not only for the video, but also for their message of love, which is extended to each one of us. And in that spirit, we light this candle to remind us of God's light and love that are with us always. In our service today, we are going to celebrate the sacrament of communion. and everyone is invited to participate. So at this time, or hopefully you've already done it, or you can press pause and go do it now, you can gather some bread and wine or whatever else you might have handy, as we are reminded that God is able to take what is ordinary and do what is extraordinary, just as God does with each one of our lives. The sacraments help us to see, hear, touch, and taste God's presence among us. Things like God, faith, love, and grace are intangible things. We can't see them or touch them, but we can see and feel their impact. But through the sacraments, we put substance to those things. We make them visible, allowing us to draw closer to God and to one another. Augustine called it an outward sign of an inward grace. And so to call us to worship today, hear these words from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Please join with me now in prayer. God of grace, God of love, those things that are intangible become visible when we gather for worship. We see your presence in music, in the prayers, in the fellowship, and in the sacrament, which give us glimpses of your love and grace. And while we are separated by space, we are united in faith and in our desire to receive your love and grace into our own lives, so that we can then share it with others. God, use this time of worship to show us how. And we ask this, uniting our voices with the words Jesus taught. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. We're going to share a gathering song now that might be new to some of you, but others might be quite familiar with it. And I think one of the beauties of online worship is that if this is a new song, you can pause, you can go back and listen to it again. And I encourage you to do so with this song if it is new to you. And the song is called Blessed Be Your Name, which we will share together now. Do you know what an echidna is? It turns out that they are small, little spiky animals. They look sort of like a large hedgehog, and they come from Australia. They, along with the platypus, are the only mammals in the world that lay eggs. And today we're going to hear a story about three ordinary echidnas who were able to achieve an extraordinary thing because they worked together, despite their spiky challenges.
This is an echidna. Echidnas come from Australia. They eat ants. They lay eggs. We're not kidding, it's true. They are very, very spiky. Echidnas love mountain climbing, and the greatest of all mountaineers are Emma, Errol, and Edith Echidna, and this is their story. It begins at the base camp of Mount Everest. "Come on, team," yelled Errol as he ran across the glacier and charged up a tower of ice. "This is living," cried Emma as she leapt over a crevasse. "Stop," said Edith. "We're not climbing some ant hill. This is Mount Everest, the highest, the greatest, the most dangerous mountain in the entire world. If we're going to succeed, we must stick together." Over the glacier and up the ridge climbed the echidnas, when suddenly an icy cold snowstorm swept across the mountain. "We're going to freeze to death," shivered Emma. "You're on your own. I'm going alone," yelled Errol as he charged up the mountain. "Stop," said Edith. "If we're going to survive, we must stick together. Quick, into the little red tent." So the three echidnas scrambled out of the storm and into the little red tent. Now, you probably think the echidnas are snuggled up, drinking hot chocolate and singing camp songs. Well, let's look inside and see. "Ow! R! You almost killed me with your spikes," cried Emma. "You spiked me first," yelled Errol. "I'm out of here." "Stop," said Edith. "Of course we're spiking each other. We're echidnas. But if we're going to survive, we must stick together." So Errol, Edith, and Emma got as comfortable as possible and drifted off to sleep. "Ow!" Snore. Snore. R! Snore. The next morning was perfect for climbing. "Come on, team," yelled Errol as he shoveled snow off the tent. "This is living," cried Emma as she gazed across the mountains. "Stick together," said Edith. "You never know. We may run into a Yeti." So do you know what a Yeti is? If you do, you can skip the next bit. If not, and if you plan to visit the Himalayas on your next holiday, pay careful attention. This is a Yeti. Yetis come from Nepal. They do not lay eggs. They are soft and fluffy, and Yetis eat echidnas, and actually anything else, as long as it isn't red. "Quick," yelled Edith, "into the little red tent." Now you probably think the echidnas are sitting inside the tent, eating marshmallows and telling Yeti jokes like, "Why did the Yeti cross the road?" So let's peek inside and see. "Ow! R! You're spiking me to death, you spiky head." "Well, I'm out of here, you spiky bum." "Stop, stop, stop," said Edith. Of course, we've all got spiky heads and spiky bottoms. We're echidnas. But if we're going to survive, if we're going to climb Mount Everest, we must stick together. The next morning, the Yeti was gone. "This is living," cried Emma as she swung onto the ledge. "Come on, team," yelled Errol as he fed out more rope. Up, up climbed the echidnas until there, above the clouds, the summit of Mount Everest appeared. The clouds parted, and standing before them, just below the summit, was the great smooth cliff. Errol looked at Edith, Edith looked at Emma, and Emma looked at Errol. The great smooth cliff where no hand could hold nor claw could cling. "Ow!" said Emma as she leaned against the cliff and Errol stood on her head. Said Errol as Edith climbed up onto his shoulders. Said Edith as she stretched towards the top of the great smooth cliff and grasped a tiny claw hold. "We did it, team!" yelled Errol. "This is living!" cried Emma. "We may be spiky," said Edith, "but we stuck together. We are the echidnas on Everest." And the moral of the story is, if we want to do great and marvelous things, it helps if we stick together. The end.
After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. A centurion there had a slave whom he valued highly and who was ill and close to death. When he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, asking him to come and heal his slave. When they came to Jesus, they appealed to him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy of having you do this for him. For he loves our people, and it is he who has built our synagogue for us." And Jesus went with them. But when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to say to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume you to come. But only speak the word, and let my servant be healed. For I also am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my slave, 'Do this,' and the slave does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." When those who had been sent to the house, they found the slave in good health. Soon afterwards, he went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the gate of the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow, and with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came forward and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, rise." The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has looked favorably on his people." This word about him spread throughout Judea and all the surrounding country.
This past week, we learned of the death of 100-year-old Army veteran Thomas Moore, who lived north of London, England. The man, known as Captain Tom, became a symbol of generosity and determination back in the spring when he walked 100 laps around his home to celebrate his 100th birthday. And he raised over $45 million for the British National Health Service to assist in battling COVID-19. Back in July, Queen Elizabeth came out of seclusion for the very first time since the pandemic began to bestow a knighthood upon Sir Thomas More. And it's a sad irony. Sir Captain Tom died as the result of the virus he raised so much money and awareness to combat. Others who have succumbed to the virus include famous broadcaster Larry King, country music singer Charlie Pride, Dawn Wells, who played the role of Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island, Broadway star Nick Cordero, and the aunt of a friend of mine, another friend's mother, a disproportionately high number of people from the Black community, from neighborhoods where poverty is rampant, from homeless shelters, from mental health centers, correctional facilities, and of course from long-term care residences. We don't hear the names of those who have passed, but their loss is just as heartbreaking. Playing out before us is the truth that the sorrow, grief, and loss caused by this pandemic cross all social, economic, and geographic boundaries. From the rich and famous to the poor and disenfranchised, there is no boundary that this virus cannot cross. But what we discover in our scripture passage today is that there is no boundary that compassion, love, and grace cannot cross, as expressed through the life of Jesus. The gospel writer Luke likes to pair stories together, which is what we see in today's passage. And through this pairing, Luke brings together two characters from two vastly different stations in life who share a common grief, a common dilemma. The first story takes place in Capernaum, where a centurion is grieving the impending death of his valued slave. The centurion has sent messengers to Jesus, asking him to come and heal his slave who is gravely ill. Now here is a person of privilege. He is a centurion of high rank who has soldiers under his authority. He is a Roman citizen, giving him political privilege. And he is respected by the Jewish elders who explain how the centurion has assisted in the construction of their synagogue. Yet, despite his rank, his political privilege, and his status among the community, the centurion recognizes he has no authority over the grief that has come upon him through the grave illness of his valued slave. This centurion of great authority realizes he has no authority in this matter, and so he calls upon the one who does. And he has so much trust in Jesus' capacity for compassion and healing that he doesn't even ask Jesus to come to his house. In fact, he states in verses 6 and 7, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only speak the word and let my servant be healed." And Jesus does, and the slave is healed. In the next story, the grief is the same, but the scenario is vastly different. Here we find a woman who, unlike the centurion, has no authority, yet is facing the same grief. So Jesus has traveled to Nain, and while approaching the town gate, he sees a large crowd, which turns out to be a funeral procession carrying the body of a man. And it turns out that this man was this mother's only son, and she was a widow. So not only did this woman have no authority, she is now in a precarious financial situation with no male figure to provide for her. And unlike the centurion, this widow does not approach Jesus for help. Instead, we read that when Jesus saw her, he had compassion for her. He touched the funeral bier and told the young man to get up, and he did. And it's interesting that the word used for compassion in verse 13 is the Greek word spagnitsomai, which actually refers to the internal organs, in the inner bowels of the body, which literally means to be moved so deeply by something that you feel it in the pit of your stomach, in the center of your being. Now, we tend to refer to our heart as the seat of emotion, saying that our heart goes out to someone when we are moved by compassion. But spagnitsomai is even deeper. And Luke uses this verb 2 other times in the stories of the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son, which we will be looking at in the coming weeks. And in this case, Jesus is moved so deeply by the situation of this grieving widow that he feels it in the pit of his being. And he responds with deep compassion, spagnitsomai. Now, the pairing of these two stories reminds us that no one is outside the bounds of Jesus' compassion, spagnitsomai. From the privileged position of the Roman centurion to the dire situation of the grieving widow, Jesus responds to them both with deep compassion. And then he puts that compassion into action, doing something to change their situations, to level the playing field, offering both of them grace, healing, and hope. I think we are living in a time when the playing field needs to be leveled. The pandemic has exposed great discrepancies within our communities. We're all facing the same crisis, but we are not all receiving the same levels of care and protection. So how can we level the playing field? Well, it's interesting that our scripture passage for today begins, the very beginning, verse 1, with these words. After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. And what Luke is referring to here is what we call the Sermon on the Plain, the level ground. It's Luke's version of Matthew's Sermon on the Mount, and it's a compilation of Jesus's main teachings. Teachings like love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer them the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. So the Sermon on the Plain is Jesus leveling the playing field, teaching that everyone is worthy of love and compassion, and we are the ones to be extending that love and compassion. The centurion, from his position of authority, and the widow who had no authority, each one was the recipient of Jesus' compassion, and each one of them had their lives enhanced and were given hope as a result. This pandemic has proven that even though the threat is the same, the playing field is not level. We have seen this virus take down those whose names we know, the rich and the famous, as well as those whose names we will never know. The virus knows no boundaries, but seems to disproportionately eke its way into neighborhoods and communities already facing the scourge of poverty, underemployment, inequity, and neglect. How can we level the playing field? And I think the work begins when we look upon those who are grieving the impact of this pandemic the way Jesus looked upon the widow, with spagnitsomai, compassion so deep we feel it in the pit of our stomachs. And then with that compassion, that spagnitsomai, we set about the work of leveling the playing field. Please join with me now in prayer. God, we grieve along with those who are grieving such great losses, and we look upon their situations with spagnitsomai, deep compassion. But God, help us to turn our compassion into action and action into hope. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, to help us now prepare for the sacrament of communion, we are going to share together this video from the musical group called The Many.
We are the wandering, we are the seeking, we are the ones left out to dry. We are the bleeding, our hearts are weeping. We are the broken body of Christ. And when we eat, we are fed the love that God has given. And when we drink, we take it in. This love, this earthly heaven. We are the thirsty, looking for mercy. We have all been kicked aside. We are the stumbling, our hands are fumbling. We are the broken body of Christ. And when we eat, we are fed the love that God has given. And when we drink, we take it in. This love, this earthly heaven. We are loved just as we are. Taste and see, loved as we are. Beautifully different, loved as we are. Just as we are. We are loved just as we are. Taste and see, loved as we are. Beautifully different, loved as we are. Just as we are. And when we eat, we are fed the love that God has given. And when we drink, we take it in. This love, this earthly heaven. We are the wandering, we are the seeking. We are the broken body of Christ.
We are the broken body of Christ, and yet here we gather in all of our brokenness, discovering the beauty that shines through each one of our cracks. We come to this sacrament in all of our brokenness, to be reminded once again of God's love that is displayed through brokenness, the broken relationship with one of the disciples, the broken body with its nail-scarred hands, the broken bread. And here we are reminded that God's love can take that which was broken and make it whole once again. When we eat, we are fed the love that God has given. When we drink, we take it in, this love, this earthly heaven. We are loved just as we are. As we prepare to come together in this sacrament from our various homes and situations, I invite you to join with me for the responsive words of invitation, which will appear on your screen. We are here because Jesus has called us, strangers and friends, locals and visitors, the certain and the curious. It is always a mixed company that Jesus gathers and invites to his table, where in bread and wine he meets us. And through him, we who are different are joined to each other in unity. So come, not because you understand, but because you are understood. Come not because of how you feel, but because God has food for you. Come not because you deserve a place, but because Jesus invites you, just as you are. And this table does not belong to any denomination, church, or community. It belongs only to Jesus. And it was at table that Jesus met people, heard their stories, and shared his. It was at table that Jesus deepened his friendships with poor folk and prostitutes, the business class, and puzzled bystanders. And it was at table that Jesus shared profound insights into who God is and who we are. And it was at table with bread and wine that Jesus initiated the sacrament that we now celebrate. Please join with me now in prayer. For the power of love in human life and history, we give thanks and praise. Long ago, our ancestors knew love's power, and they shared that story throughout the generations. Love bound them in covenant, teaching them to live in community with compassion and concern for the poorest among them. That compassion and concern became clouded through systems of oppression and violence. And so, in the midst of that struggle, Jesus became the face of love, showing us the way to abundant life. In word and deed, he announced love's new reign of justice, reconciliation, and peace. Filled with the courage and passion of love's spirit, he gave his life to challenge the unjust systems of this world. On the night of his betrayal and arrest, as he shared a meal with his friends, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to his followers, saying, "Share this bread among you. This is my body, which will be broken for justice. Do this to remember me." When supper was over, he took the cup, gave thanks, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Share this wine among you. This is my blood, which will be shed for liberation. Do this to remember me." God of love, Spirit of compassion, bless us and this bread and wine. May this meal be food and drink for our journey, renewing, sustaining, and making us whole. Amen. So come to this table, you who have much faith and you who would like to have more. You who have been to this sacrament often and who have not been for a long time or ever at all. You who have tried to follow Jesus and you who have failed. Come, for it is Christ who invites us to meet with him here. As Jesus broke bread, we break this bread. And as Jesus shared the cup, we share this cup. And as the video that we just watched stated, when we eat, we are fed the love that God has given. When we drink, we take it in, this love, this earthly heaven. We are loved, just as we are. Taste and see. The bread of life for all who hunger, the cup of compassion for a broken world. Please join with me now in prayer. God of love, we give you thanks for satisfying our hungry hearts with this meal. Send us from here to reveal your love in the world. Inspire within us the resolve and the courage, the compassion and the passion to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with you. Amen. And as our service comes to an end, we are going to join together with the hymn, Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, a reminder that all we do is being driven by God.
Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, feed me now and evermore. Feed me now and evermore. Open now the crystal fountain, whence the healing stream doth flow. Let the fiery cloudy pillar lead me o'er my journey through. Strong deliverer, be thy still my strength and shield. Be thy still my strength and shield. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Death of death and hell's destruction, land me safe on Canaan's side. Songs of praises, I will ever give to thee. I will ever give to thee. Songs of praises, I will ever give to thee. I will ever give to thee.
Go now into this new week to share God's compassion with all people, leveling the playing field so that each person would know how valued and valuable they are. And may you know how valuable and valued you are. And may God, who is always and forever with us and for us, fill us with hope and show us how to be love to others. Amen.